You want to build everything because they're focused more on the building versus proving out the business and creating the true kind of economic value in the company. It's a maturity change. I remember talking one time to a founder who was pretty experienced who explicitly told his team, you should value your own time at $10,000 per hour. And so if you're looking to use this service and it's, this is going to cost $5,000, I could just build it in a day. Be like, nope, that doesn't count because your day, 8 hours, it's $80,000. This is $5,000. That's the trade-off, $10,000. And so just to overemphasize that, because engineers always underemphasize or underestimate how long it'll take. And of course the maintenance and the overhead and all that. But really it's the leverage. It's the time spent not doing things for customers, the opportunity cost compared to getting faster to product market fit.
Hey, and welcome to this episode of Build versus Buy, a 30-minute conversation with product and engineering leaders about situations during their career where they've had to decide whether to build or buy. If you'd like to be a guest, reach out to me at Mang-Git@useanvil.com. That's Manggit@useanvil.com. If you enjoyed this podcast, please like and subscribe on YouTube or leave us a rating/review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Enjoy this episode. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Build vs. Buy podcast. I'm your host, Mang-Git, founder and CEO of Anvil, the fastest way to build software for paperwork. And today as my guest, I have Michael Grinich, the founder of WorkOS, and also the founder of Nylas back in the early 2010s. Michael, it's great to have you on this podcast.
Thanks so much for having me. It's great to see you.
Awesome. Maybe to start, we always like to give the audience a little bit of background about yourself, about what you've done in your career, and definitely share a little bit about WorkOS.
Yeah. You mentioned Nylas. Maybe I'll go back there. Taking you back 12, 13 years, 14 years. I get out of school. Yeah, I know. Now you make me feel old, both of us. Get out of school, move to San Francisco, and start with startup to go build the next generation of email. This is back in the days when Gmail was slow, and it's like before Slack. Everybody's in email all day, every day. So built this app, took it to market, started getting users, and tried to sell it, tried to commercialize it because we wanted to build a business around it, and found that there were all of these customers, prospective customers that couldn't buy it because it was missing all the security stuff. So we built this product that people really loved. Like the design of it was really good. We dialed in the user experience.
I was a user of Nylas, definitely a user.
I remember that. Yeah, the Paul Graham essay, the YC phrase, make something people want.
Yeah.
So I was like, I made something people wanted. People downloaded it and shared it and spread it. But when you actually went to go sell it into companies, into organizations that were going to use it for their entire team, that was the first time I ever talked to people in security and procurement and people in IT. And it turns out the email, especially because it touches sensitive data, it got blocked completely. These companies would say, no way we can use this app. And I'd say, you guys are already using it. You're already downloading and using it. They say, nope, we need the enterprise version if we're going to pay for this at all. And that led me on this journey many years later after I left Nylas and was trying to figure out what to do next into this world of IT. I didn't really grow up as a child imagining I wanted to build the infrastructure for kind of IT systems and SaaS, but being a founder and building this product, I realized that there's this huge gap in between when you build a great product, essentially when you get product market fit, and on the other side, actually how you commercialize it for the workplace, for the enterprise. And I gave a talk about this called Crossing the Enterprise Chasm, this idea of there being a big gap in between PMF and becoming enterprise ready on the other side. A lot of the stuff you have to do is figure out your sales team, pricing, go-to-market and all that. But there's all this other stuff that's actually in the product itself. It's features, it's technology, it's things like security and encryption and logging, and authentication and single sign-on. People probably know about that, integrating with those systems. And so that's what WorkOS builds. So I started the second company to go solve that problem, the infrastructure problem that every SaaS company has as they grow up market and scale. And so WorkOS is like Stripe for enterprise IT stuff. And I started this back in late 2018. So it's been a minute, but what's really cool is like today we're powering this for products that people listening to this show probably use. Things like ChatGPT and Claude and Cursor and Perplexity and Vercel and Webflow and a bunch of these like major SaaS companies, we're the infrastructure under the hood powering them and helping them grow.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy to think about this where maybe in the early 2000s through like the early 2010s, like especially Silicon Valley tech was still often viewed as like consumer focused, not really enterprise software. The enterprise software was the SAPs, the Siemens, the name your large corporation that builds like this clunky ERP type software companies. And they had it figured out and took them a long time to they set the standard on all these enterprise stuff. But really then in the last, call it 5 years, maybe a little bit more, there's a whole crop of these technology companies in Silicon Valley, startups that are just uniquely geared to helping you succeed in the enterprise. Just think of all the compliance companies out there, the SOC 2 compliance companies. Like previously, you wouldn't do a SOC 2 unless you really had to. And now it's like turn on a couple monitoring systems, connect some stuff, and then you can start getting your SOC 2 early on. And then there's obviously WorkOS, right? Like you guys make all of that difficult, like RBAC type integrations, authentication, stuff like that. That's like really annoying to do. And it's not core to your product. Easy.
Yeah. In particular, if you don't do it, it slows down your growth. These companies can't use your products. It actually limits your ability to expand. I think it's a bunch of different things together, like this trend occurring. People used to call it the consumerization of the enterprise. That was a phrase that a lot of people used. And back in, say, 2010 to 2015, the era of Dropbox accelerating and people bringing new tools and early Airtable and stuff like that, early Slack. It was exactly that. It was people bringing new tools and experiences into the workplace that felt like consumer products and allowed people to be more collaborative, communicate faster, more fun to use. They're just better experiences. And so there's this Cambrian explosion of new products and creativity. The difference, though, from now, so back then, those products would start off being very consumer focused and then slowly over time figure out enterprise. Dropbox got started, and for many years, it was just for small teams. It was for students, agencies, whatever. And then eventually Dropbox figured out enterprise stuff. But like 7, 8, 10 years later, Figma, another great example, started off very much consumer side and it eventually did enterprise. Maybe things like Trello or Atlassian products started off with small teams and consumer. And over the course of many years, slowly moved up market. And so they could tip their toes into it just slowly to start working on these enterprise things. But generally, they could succeed without doing all this enterprise stuff. The difference today is these companies, they go after enterprise pretty much immediately. So Cursor is a customer of ours. They're powered by WorkOS. And if you look at Cursor's growth, within a year of them launching, like within 12 months of launching, they started going after enterprise. It was this immediate acceleration. And they still have an amazing PLG consumer business, but no longer can people rest on their laurels to go after the enterprise market. There's this acceleration. And I think that's only going to continue with AI. What I've seen is that these big enterprise companies were previously slow to adopt new tools. They would look at Dropbox and say, we can wait on that. We're using SharePoint or whatever. So we can wait on that. We'll use our Jabber chat or something before then. But now with the AI products, the enterprise companies rapidly adopt them. These enterprise organizations, they realize they need to adopt these tools to be competitive right overnight. And so there's this acceleration of those tools. There's the demand on the acceleration side. And then the last thing, which you touched on with things like SOC 2 compliance, these enterprise, quote, enterprise capabilities, they used to be like true enterprise, right? Fortune 500, huge companies. You only got to do it if you're in the big leagues. Now what's happened is the enterprise requirements, they're being adopted by smaller organizations. They move downstream. Things like single sign-on, a pretty classic big enterprise SAML authentication thing. Companies with fewer than 100 people mandating, requiring it in SaaS products that they build. And I think that's a result of companies buying more products, needing to get more sophisticated around operational overhead. And then just the security concerns. There's been a lot of breaches. Companies are just more sensitive around cyber attacks and their data. And so all of this is a perfect storm for what we provide. Like we help these companies go up market faster. We help them grow sooner. And, you know, the name of this podcast, Build versus Buy, we make it so they don't have to build it in-house. Traditionally, I think that was, people thought about it as a dollar cost. Do I hire engineers to do this or do I pay WorkOS, right? Do I go staff a team on this? Or maybe I can find offshore engineers to do it if I need to do it cheap, right? Or some other region. But ultimately, it's like dollars of salary of engineers running code versus paying a vendor. What we actually sell with WorkOS is time to market. It's a time machine. Because today, in today's market, when it's hyper competitive, if you don't have SSO and you're going to say, oh, I'll get it done in 9 months, That's 9 months for your competitor to go capture the enterprise market. It's not
You
that
lost the
time
deal
horizon.
already.
Yeah, like the old time horizon, like a Figma or Dropbox back in the day, they weren't competitors, but now it's crazy competitive going after enterprise. And those contracts are pretty sticky and stay around. So we actually sell time to market. It's not cash builder spy. It's time machine builder spy.
I was going to ask you earlier when you mentioned this, when you mentioned Cursor and how they went after that enterprise super early and how that's in contrast to the previous generation of SaaS companies. But you kind of answered it in your dialogue just now, right? Why they went in enterprise so early. It just makes sense, I feel. If you can capture those large contracts and do it quickly, easily, not actually spend all that effort and resources to build out the requirements in order to capture those contracts, why wouldn't you? I
Yeah,
think
there used to be this dichotomy that you had to do one or the other.
right.
You're a consumer company or you're an enterprise company. You would start off as a consumer company and then inevitably you would make the switch and it would suck and everybody would hate it.
Yeah.
And I would talk to founders and they would dread doing this. They would dread, I remember at Dropbox, like when I worked there as an intern, like people didn't want to go after enterprise because they didn't want to become the big bad enterprise company.
Right.
You
It was
know,
boring.
yeah, going after
Was it
enterprise
fun?
was boring. It meant you wouldn't build good products anymore. It meant you wouldn't care about design. It meant the pointy-haired bosses in the suits ran the place instead
Yeah.
of the craft-focused developers and designers building great experiences. I think that's actually false today. That's actually no longer the reality. Today, what you find is the best companies, the best products, the ones that win in market, they immediately have this dual approach where they're able to have a super strong PLG consumer type of motion. And at the same time, they're able to go capture enterprise revenue and grow and scale. And they put the two together in harmony versus
Yeah.
doing one and then destroying, making a switch to the other. And it's a result as well of products like WorkOS and you mentioned the Soft 2 products like Vanta or Drana, them allowing companies to faster accelerate. I think today what's pretty cool is like you can be a small company. Like we have a lot of customers that are 10 or 20-person companies and they're really small, but they're doing millions of dollars in revenue for enterprise. They're able to punch above their weight class by this type of technology. And to me, that's the value of platforms. Just generally, what platforms let you do is punch above your weight class. AWS, you don't have to rack data centers, rack machines in a data center. Like Stripe, you don't have to go get a merchant account. Twilio, you don't have to talk to like SMS aggregators. You talk to telecos, right? WorkOS, you don't have to think about the enterprise stuff. You just can focus on product experiences. And I think over time that will continue to happen. Ideally, the size of companies will trend down and the impact and breadth that they can go capture will trend up.
And just like listing off a couple of things you mentioned here that created this perfect storm for WorkOS. One is the enterprise buyers actually now expect products to work like consumer products. Like it's no longer this must do these 10 things checklist and it doesn't matter if it's ugly and difficult to use, it just needs to do it. They expect it to actually work well for their employees. And on the flip side, it's just been easier for more and more companies to adopt these best practices that used to require entire teams, right? And created the perfect moment for WorkOS to come along and solve that.
Yeah, I wish I could say I was clairvoyant or something like that. I think
You're
just
pretty close. I
practically,
remember you sending me a slide deck early on, being like, "Hey, you should use us for enterprise." And we're like, "We're not selling to enterprises yet." And you're like, "You should use us." And then 2 years later, we find out, okay, nobody wants to build SSL. Let's go look at WorkOS and just get it done.
go drop it in. Many such cases. Yeah, that's what's super funny is there's literally this week I had a founder DM me saying, "Hey, we're ready to finally integrate WorkOS and ready to go." And I looked back in my email and I started talking to them in 2019. That was the beginning where I was like, "You guys should consider using us." Yeah, and just now they were like, "Okay, I think we're ready to make the switch and ready to pop it in." You know, it's funny if these companies too. I don't know if you're seeing this, but because of the AI coding systems, coding agents, Cloud
Yeah.
Code, Codex, whatever, Cursor, migrations are a lot easier. It used to be to do like a code change or a migration was this enormously complicated thing. It's so hard to actually change. You'd have to get on your roadmap and all this stuff. And it meant that the tech stack that you started with, you were stuck with. You made those early decisions and everything's built on top of it. And why would you go spend 2 weeks doing a refactor that's going to be a lateral benefit? No one's going to do that. It's like a terrible use of time when your users need features, when you're grinding away. But if you can just throw Claude on it and have Claude do it in a background process, like we have this thing we just launched it's a CLI that installs WorkOS for you.
Mhm.
It's pretty sick.
Yeah.
It uses Claude under the hood, the Opus first 4.5 model, uses a bunch of skills, uses a special connection that we have to our infrastructure to set up and manage the environment. And literally you just run this command and you go make a cup of coffee and you come back and it's like essentially open the PR. It's done the entire change. And that's crazy. The fact that you can, I think what's happening now is the choices that people have made on their technology stack previously were like pretty firm. They firm up, they build on
Mhm.
top of it. But now it's crazy. I'll give you another example. So we have, here's the thing, internally, some engineers are building. Everything at WorkOS is written in TypeScript, right? We love TypeScript. We use everything end to end. There's a crypto library that we're using that's written in Ruby. And it's not a ton of code, right? But it's some crypto that we want to use in WorkOS. We were trying to figure out like how to use this or how it would fit in. We literally just had Claude port it to TypeScript
Mm. Yeah.
and port all of the tests because transformers are really good at transforming. And it turns out you can just spoof the logic over and we can run it natively in TypeScript. And like that to me is like crazy that the
Right.
software is so malleable or plastic now. It used to be hardened. You'd have to change things different. Now it's just like the logic can be extracted and remanufactured elsewhere. And I think from like a using a vendor infrastructure systems, that's going to be pretty remarkable as developers build new things. The ability to kick off a coding agent, go to sleep, have it run for 12 hours, wake up and have it have rewritten your entire code base. That's bananas, but it's possible today.
Actually, there's so many directions I want to take this now, just based off last couple of comments. I think the first one was you were talking about using AI agents to help make this migration or implement WorkOS, which is it's crazy. It's like I was thinking in my head, yeah, pre-written prompts or something they could just like but you actually just wrapped it and made it even nicer for the developers. But I guess does that beg the question of whether developers should just be building more? And you obviously, as a kind of a platform infrastructure provider, part of the argument is that you shouldn't build this piece. You should build everything else, but you shouldn't build this piece, right? Because this piece is hard. It needs to be compliant. It needs to be all of these things. While at the same time, you have this oppositional force, which is just saying, hey, whatever you want, you can build with a couple prompts and a couple developer tools, the AI developer tools these days. So how do you think about that push and pull? And especially as you talk to customers that you might have been talking to for 5 years, 6 years at this point.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. It's not immediately evident that WorkOS would be still durable in the face of vibe coding. This is something I thought. I had this thought early on, but the AI thing moves so fast. I didn't spend too much time thinking about it. But at one point, I was like, if all software engineers are going to get replaced by AI, Darius saying this, I would have these dinners where I'd meet with engineering leaders and founders. He'd come to one at one point, and I'd be like, "Are we cooked? Are we done? Is my CS degree worthless? Is my career ruined?" And I think for some engineering disciplines, that's true. Like pure front end engineering, there's a whole craft of taking visual mockups and turning into front end code. There's a little bit of it that still exists, but by and large, that's gone. That's like just solved as a problem today, which is quite remarkable. It doesn't really get discussed enough, I think. But what we've seen is interesting is like with the stuff that we provide, all this stuff around enterprise grade security stuff and logging and stuff, it's actually the last thing people want to vibe code. Nobody's coming to us and ripping WorkOS out and throwing vibe coded experiences around it or AI assisted coding. We're actually having the opposite. There are people who are building applications using AI tools and they're saying, I want to use more things like WorkOS that are these durable pillars, and then I can put my generated code on top of that. And it's inverse of open source. If you think back in the day, 10 years ago or 20 years ago, the most sort of bug-free systems were open source because like sunlight's the best disinfectant, the most number of eyes create the shallowest bugs, kernels, drivers, open source databases would converge to being really stable over periods of time because so many people were using it versus proprietary systems where you can't see the code and people can't fix it and there's just known bugs in it forever. That stuff sucks. That's why
And
like
bug
Linux
fixes
is really
took forever.
stable. Forever to get mainlined. Whereas for Linux or Memcached or MySQL or something, there's a bug that's found, someone patches it, they upstream the patch, boom, everybody gets it in the next release. And the releases are fast. And open source development just created these like stable components out in the world. What's interesting is like vibe coded stuff, AI assisted agent coding is actually the opposite because when it generates it, the moment it generates it, it's the least trusted because you're like, it just got spit out from the model. I don't know if the latest GPT 5.2 model in Codex is creating security vulnerabilities or not. Is my prompt good? Is my prompt not good? How do I verify? How do I test it? And so I think there's going to be like an increasing set of tools that developers build on top of, which are these primitives, which are known to be stable and secure, kind of like previous era of databases and previous era of network or frameworks or runtime, things like Linux or things like HA proxy or Memcache or whatever. But these are now at the service layer. And what developers are doing is tying these kind of building blocks together. And the thing that's tying it together is the agentic coding tools. It's the things that are actually the vibe coded, but they're like bolting together like durable components. And those durable pieces are these like atomic things that you can depend on. And we're one of those in the ecosystem.
It's funny. I remember 5, 6, 7 years ago, the joke that I would have amongst my team was like, we're just plumbers. We're just plumbing this with that and plumbing everything together. And it's plumbing with code, not physical like pipes, but that's what we're doing. Most of coding is just like A with B. And I guess like I have never really thought about it where like building a good A and building a good B actually has a lot of value. And it's that extra 10%, let's call it, of juice, of stability, of performance that you can get by really focusing in on a problem and not just vibe coding it, that makes your system, I guess what you call like the pillar that you build on top of, right? And especially for these like more foundational pieces, authentication, databases, paperwork, in our case, as we would argue, but these foundational pieces that you just need to work.
It's funny you call it plumbers. Like we launched a product about 6 months ago called it's called Pipes. It's called WorkOS Pipes, and it's an integrations product. So it's like a thing that connects systems together, and it helps you integrate various SaaS services together. So if you're building an app, you got to connect to Google Drive and HubSpot and Salesforce and Snowflake and yada. It does all that for you. It's like a plumbing thing. But I've often thought that infrastructure systems are like plumbing. And if you look at actually the technology in the world that has saved the most number of lives, it's actually plumbing. Because plumbing is what lets cities exist. It's the plumbing, the input of water, clean water, and the output of sewage. It's what lets us clean ourselves and make food and be hygienic. And it literally is what lets cities be habitable for people, the sewage systems. And it's this thing that like, if it works properly, if it completely checks the mark, you don't think about it. You turn on the tap, you put a glass under it, and you drink it. It's very intimate. You put it in your body. It's like you're trusting it to be safe right away. And yet it's so good, we just don't think about it. We don't think about where it comes from. Ideally, we don't think about if it's clean or not. You just use it. And the same thing for when you drain something. When it goes down the drain, it's out of mind. It's done. You don't think about, is this going to leak, or where is it ending up, or where else is it going? Good plumbing should be invisible and disappear and build society on top of it. I think that's funny. There's a certain type of people that like working on that. And then there's people that don't. Like, in order to work on this type of plumbing stuff, I think you actually need to be comfortable not being the prima donna. And in fact, I would take it a step further and say, you need to find it satisfying to enable other people. It's kind of like, instead of being the person on stage in the spotlight, doing the song and dance, you need to be like the lighting guy or the sound guy that's in the back running the soundboard, the person off stage with the headset running the show, and be enabling other people, and find that really, really satisfying. And I think that's
maybe knowing that if you're not there, then this house of cards might not actually stand. Like, you're there supporting, but not necessarily needing to claim the credit.
It's like the invisible men and women, hold things together, hold in that. I've always found that kind of work to actually be like pretty satisfying. I think the reason why is it's really high leverage. If you build a specific app or a specific thing, you can only impact just your customers or just the people using it. But if you build tools for other people, it's like a teach a man to fish type of thing, right? If you build tools and you enable other people to do things, your impact is much broader. It's much wider. And what's even better is if you can build tools that help other people build tools, you have this continues to be this like exponential multiplier on top. And plumbing is like that. Cities, there's one of my favorite projects is the project they've been working on in New York to build a new water wand. And they've been working on it for like decades. It's this new thing it'll be a huge, I think they're very close to finishing it, or they just finished it. But it's like these 3 pipes that are like, I think they're like 11 feet across or something like that. They're absolutely enormous, and they're bored through like solid rock underground, like all the way from upstate New York. It's literally like they're making a river that flows through rock underground all the way to New York City.
Is this to provide clean water or is it to
Yeah,
drain?
it's clean water. It's
Oh,
water for the city. Yeah, exactly.
wow.
And it's like sculpting the earth, but in this way that enables New York to continue to grow as a city, have clean water supply and everything. And just things like that, you don't see it. It's under the ground, but it supports everyone. The software version of that, I think, is infrastructure, like WorkOS or what you guys build as well in many other companies. But yeah, if I was to change our logo for a company at some point, it might be like a pipe or something, or a wrench, or like the plumbers.
Yeah. Yeah. Add some numbers on there. I feel like
Yeah.
the analogies are endless, especially for San Francisco being a gold rush boom bust city and selling tools. But maybe to take a little bit back to the main focus of today's podcast, which is building versus buying, and like specific situations where either you've experienced it or you were on the selling side, selling a tool. And maybe just, you've already touched on a lot of this, but just really explicitly call out some of the frameworks that you use or the ways you think about that decision in order to actually make the correct decision. We'd love to, if you have a specific example, that'd be great. Or maybe a set of examples. Yeah, that would be really helpful.
Yeah, I think so. I do this a lot of times with our customers, of course, right? Because they're in this situation all day, every day. When we talk to them, do I build this? Do I use a service like WorkOS? Our product is not cheap. It's definitely not inexpensive. It's often one of the more expensive things people use, but it's because it gives them speed. It gives them time. Value of time is often greater than the cost of these things. I think for companies, like the most important thing is to figure out like what is the essential thing that you're trying to prove out as a business? What is the singular one or maybe it's one or two things that need to occur in order for you to win the whole market? And how fast can you get to that point? That's the startup game. Once you reach there, once you're done, then it's a theme of optimization and cutting things. But when you're in the game, you're trying to prove out the core thesis where you're in a market where time is a sensitive mechanic. Pretty much anything other than trying to prove out that core piece of the business is a distraction. And companies should be willing to spend a lot of money to accelerate towards that. I actually see this in our customer base when I do sales calls and stuff, that the more experienced, more mature entrepreneurs, people who have done it once or twice before, they are willing to spend gobs of money, almost anything possible to accelerate them and keep the core thing the most important thing. Whereas people that are like first-time founders or earlier in their career, it's their first job, they want to build everything from scratch because building is fun.
Right.
It's like playing with Legos. It's fun to do it. You want to build everything because they're focused more on the building versus proving out the business and creating the true kind of economic value in the company. It's a maturity change. I remember talking one time to a founder who was pretty experienced who explicitly told his team, you should value your own time at $10,000 per hour. And so if you're looking to use this service and it's, this is going to cost $5,000, I could just build it in a day. Be like, nope, that doesn't count because your day, 8 hours, it's $80,000. This is $5,000. That's the trade-off, $10,000. And so just to overemphasize that, because engineers always underemphasize or underestimate how long it'll take. And of course, the maintenance and the overhead and all that. But really, it's the leverage. It's the time spent not doing things for customers, the opportunity cost compared to getting faster to product market fit. And so as a company, I was thinking about the kind of project of this podcast, the title of the show, I was like, I think we've actually outsourced most of our stuff. And the only places where I feel like we've made mistakes actually is where we picked the wrong vendors, which hasn't given us leverage, but we still outsourced it.
Yeah.
Like an example, we have a tool that we use, a platform, which allows us to build our internal tools on top of, which will remain nameless. So I don't like shame them or anything. It was well regarded and was like seen as this hot thing and a bunch of big companies were using it. So we adopted it and it's been a pain to work with. It's actually very hard to build internal tools on top of it. It's very hard for our team to craft things. It's actually restricted our enablement. And we've just suffered with it for a while. But what's interesting now, the thing that's shifting is with the vibe coding platforms and systems, you can actually build this stuff faster. And so for certain things like this, I think the build versus buy is swapping a little bit over in terms of that, but we still need it to be secure and controlled and safe and have the right type of permissions on top of it.
Maybe in this scenario, the vendor lock-in is like becoming less and less of a challenge for an organization like yours when you can just migrate over, right? As you mentioned at the top of the show, when you can just migrate over to a new tool or maybe just create a good enough version overnight with Claude Code, just with a couple of prompts, right? And say, here's what we do today, replicate it essentially.
You still miss out on the ongoing support, the person you can call when something goes wrong, the training team. I think especially with products that are for non-technical users, this is
Mm-hmm.
really a big piece of it. If it's an internal system that you're using to build your administration tools and your engineering team would be working on that and it ties into your core database, cool. It's probably similar. It's probably close to your own technology stack that you could vibe code some stuff. That's what I'm talking about for
Mm-hmm.
internal, this whole kind of internal application surface. Something like Datadog. Datadog's awesome. We spend so much money on it, but it is such a cool product and it does so much for us. They keep making it better and better. And we've never really had an issue with it going down. It's been extremely stable. It's one of these vendors we spend a lot on them. I could build a crappy version of Datadog in a couple of weeks, and I
Mm-hmm.
could put it on top of open source ClickHouse, and I could make it cheap or run some other analytics. Actually, I know as your first company, we ran our own analytics stack. It was like, it was an up stack, so Elasticsearch, Logstash, and Graphile, and Kibana and stuff like that, Grafana. But it was a pain. It was a pain to manage. It went down. It would get sluggish. It's like hard to. We always had to have like our systems engineering team looking at it and poking around on it. For us, we just use Datadog and we just turn dollars now into focus elsewhere in the company. So I think
Mm-hmm.
there are these places where the operational overhead is complex, and then the other place is with the non-technical users. So great example. I hate pretty much every single ATS in the world, like candidate tracking system. They all suck because they're complicated for a bunch of reasons. It's one of these kind of tar pit development experiences. We found one recently we like because they actually use WorkOS as Ashby, is this company, which makes a pretty great service. And they pull analytics. And it's a very modern take on an ATS. So we were looking at migrating to that or maybe building our own thing. And some of the people I talked to, an engineer, said, hey, we could actually build something out pretty fast. And ATS is like a simpler CRM in a
Yeah.
sense. It's a little bit simpler than your sales database. And people are vibe coding CRMs. But the problem is we can do it once, but what happens when we need another feature in it in 3 months or in 6 months or a new integration or we want it to be better? It's just that one moment in time where we spend the engineering work. Our engineers are going to need to go do other stuff. They're going to need to go
Mm-hmm.
build other things and go off in other places. And unfortunately, like our recruiting team is not like at the technical level to be able to actually vibe code and deploy their own ATS. So I think there is going to be a gap here, especially for organizations where parts of the organization really don't have they haven't won the vibe code Olympics yet. But maybe that'll change. I don't know. It's wild how fast it's changing. Even, what's crazy is like the 3.7 Sonnet model is like less than a year old. That's wild. So maybe all of this is moot as the models get better and better. But there's clearly some stuff that's people are not vibe coding or teams that are not doing it. But then there's other areas where it's blasting off and there's no looking back.
So maybe to summarize here, the what I heard was like there's the upfront engineering investment, but there's also the long tail that everybody like forgets to account for, or maybe less seasoned developers or less seasoned founders forget to account for when making that build versus buy decision. And also, while the technology is accelerating quite quickly, these AI technologies are accelerating quite quickly, it still hasn't quite reached a level that we all think it will maybe eventually, which is like anybody can build anything kind of situation, especially at any kind of scale. I think that it does still seem like the scale and like that last bit of juice is the part that really differentiates a toy project from a actual ready to sell product that other people will rely on.
Yeah, I think that's right. If it's an internal app, maybe it doesn't need to be at that level of polish as well.
Right.
If it's the thing you're shipping externally to external people, that's one thing because you need to compete in the market for craft and design and scale. But most products don't need to scale. Most things that you build, most apps don't need to scale. Computers are really fast right now. Databases work super well. You can get a lot of performance out of not much hardware. And I do wonder about internal systems or internal tools that people build. If it's so easy to create and regenerate, like there's a database schema on one side and you're building the kind of generating the application surface on top of it, what does it mean for that to be so fast and easy to create that it's effectively disposable?
Right.
It's something where every single time you open your browser to your ATS, it's dynamic around the data structure and generates a new application layer immediately. And maybe there's some guidelines around certain behaviors or patterns or workflows or things that feel familiar, kind of creatures of habit. You don't want to walk into your house and every day the furniture is in a different place. It's like you need to have something that's calm, but having it be adaptive in that way and dynamic, I think that's a very real possibility. I think that's that's a place where we're going across the board, not just for engineering, but like in every role. In this idea of kind of like a document. A document is disposable. You create a Google Doc and it doesn't feel, you're not creating a whole application. You're not creating a whole product. You can just use it for a while, share it, delete it, forget about it, whatever. It's not a big deal.
Everybody's Google Drive is like that.
Yeah,
where, you know,
it's
it's
a
just like
zillion
a
of these things,
pile.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just fine with it. You just keep working, keep making stuff, and focus on what's now and what's next. What does it mean when all software is that way? When every software application is disposable in that way, and it's running on top of some type of context graph or some type of context engine that's powering it. And that's the durable piece. That's the kind of persistent, durable layer that's giving context to that layer, to the actual application surface. I don't know. But it's a very different type of model than what we've had previously in terms of how we made software. And I think the entire software ecosystem is built around the idea that creating software is complex. Creating good software is really hard. It takes time, it takes energy, it takes brain power. You have to be specialized. You have to go to school for it. You got to learn all this stuff. And that's evaporated. It's gone from being this thing that was enormously challenging to effortless. And that's such a fundamental shift. Yeah.
In some ways, when you think about software, historically has been about like, how do we distill to the purest form of software that works the best for whatever thing we're trying to accomplish? And now it's shifting, or maybe realizing that like the purest form of software for any one individual is personal. And so it could be different and dynamic. So software has become more personal in that sense, where maybe it's not disposable per se, but it's like, it's instantiated for every single person that's using it in the way, shape, or form that they want it to be or need it to be, which is cool.
Right. Yeah, we all wear different clothes. Our feet are all different sizes. We all have different preferences. We all experience the world, experience life in a different way. Preferences and constraints and things just about us. But when it comes to the tools that we use, oftentimes they're identical. It's crazy. And we don't all drive the same car. We don't all eat the same food. Yeah, for whatever reason, we all use the same genome. We all use the same Google Docs. You guys all use the same Salesforce, because there's no marginal cost around the actual additional software creation, but we customize it the same way. And I think that's the biggest difference that we're going to start seeing emerge, and it's already happening.
Yeah, absolutely. I know we're coming up at these. Oh, hold on. Pineapple. I can hear myself.
Can you still hear me?
No
My
worries.
headphones just died right as I was talking to you.
Yeah, I can hear you. No problem.
Is it echoing?
There's an echo. Yeah.
Let me do this. I'm going to get these ones on. Sorry about that.
No worries.
It's not expand today.
Headphones ready.
Tell me about it. It's AirPods. Is this connecting?
Can you imagine the world where like you pull an apple, where it's like you're using it wrong? No, it really should be adapting to you. They're using it wrong.
The demands on software being personal are going to... There we go. Can you hear me still?
No, that sounds perfect. Actually, I can't hear myself anymore. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, the demands on software being personalized are going to go through the roof. People are not going to accept software that's non-personalized, as generic. People will be like, ew, that's terrible. I need it to be just like me. I need it to be hyper-personalized to my experience in my form factor and ergonomics. Mm-hmm. And I think that's really exciting. I think that will be a better world that we'll be in, but it's going to be a tough transition, and it'll require building products in new ways. And I think the whole application layer will get turned over. So it's a very exciting time to be a builder making stuff.
Also, beyond that, even just like societal acceptance of the creepiness, I guess some people would label, when your software is super, super personalized to you, it's a bit jarring, I think, for people today. And maybe soon it'll be very accepted, but it's not, I don't think we're there at this point right now. Certainly it's not ubiquitous across the world, but pockets, there are definitely people who believe it.
Not yet, but it's happening fast. And that's the crazy thing. The speed and the acceleration of this is like nothing I've ever seen. It's hard to sleep.
Yeah, every day I feel like I feel like every founder I talk to is every day you feel like you're falling further and further behind. You're never really catching up. Even the founders that are in the thick of it, that are creating these things. Cool. Maybe just to wrap it up here, I think we didn't really have a specific topic that we talked about, but we did talk about a lot of different things around the build versus buy decision. a lot of how you approach it, especially as you talk to customers. I think there were some really good points about like creating the pillars of stability for these vibe coding agents to build on top of, so that you can at least have some level of a deterministic output in your your product that you're building with these AI agents. So I think there's a lot of really good nuggets in here. Maybe just to transition to kind of some of our fun things that we like to do at the end of this podcast. And I would say the first question for you is really just maybe share something that you've been working on, either personally or at work, that you're really excited about. You shared a lot of things that you're excited about. Maybe one thing, if you had to pick one thing that you're really excited about, what would that be?
Oh, man, there's so much cool stuff we've been building. I
We
feel
all
like
have
our
ADD.
engineering team, yeah, I mean, there's so many new things that we're accelerating and building around. One thing that we've been working on for a while, actually, like over a year, kind of tooling on it, is figuring out a system for like identity and authentication and security, specifically for AI agents. And AI agents are similar to people, but they're also different in how they
Yeah.
operate and how they access stuff and the security model. I've given a couple talks about this in the last year at a couple conferences, but essentially like agents are more similar to people than they are like machines, but they can do stuff really fast.
Right.
There's this old joke, to err is human, but to screw up 1,000 times per second, you need a computer. And agents do that. Agents allow you to do that. And so we have some pretty cool stuff we've been cooking up to essentially bring authentication for agentic systems and enable developers that are building apps to make them agent ready on scale in that way. So that's one thing. We don't have a total shift yet, but it'll be coming pretty soon.
Is this
next
like
few
a
weeks.
new kind of like protocol, or is it like, how are you guys approaching this?
We're trying to leverage existing protocols as much as possible, have it be an adaptation of things that have already been standardized out there, just because that ends up generally being more successful rather than some crazy new thing. And there's a lot of prior art around people doing machine identity and intelligence. Agents just have different access patterns and different behaviors and different kind of guardrails you need to put around them. Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's like a new software model. It's when we all started building mobile apps, it was like a different thing from building web stuff. And this agent stuff feels like another one.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Cool. And then I would say the other fun question we always love asking our guests here is share a product that you've purchased recently that you either loved or would never buy again. I would say we are betting for 100 where everybody always shares something that they love, which makes total sense. But yeah, what is something that you purchased recently that you've really loved?
Oh man, I'll give you two things. One that's a little bit more expensive and one that's a little bit cheaper. So I love cooking and I love pepper, like just ground pepper. And my friend turned me on this thing. There's this thing you can buy. It's called the pepper cannon. And it's a pepper grinder, but it puts out a lot of pepper. Like usually a pepper grinder, you have to turn it a ton and your hands get tired. This thing is the pepper cannon. So it shoots out pepper like crazy. You're making a steak or something, you really want to get it really peppery. And it's made of this like hard machined aluminum. So it's really heavy. It just feels like satisfying.
Is it motorized or is it like
It's not motorized. No, it's mechanical, but it's like very well machined. It's like very smooth, like lubricated, and it's very over engineered. It's like tactical. It feels like a fighter jet bomber or something like that, but as a pepper grinder. So that's one thing I really like. And then the second thing I bought recently, which is cheaper, it's like $20 or $25 on Amazon. I don't even know the brand. There's like a gazillion of them that do this. There are these like back massagery things that you can drape over your chest. They plug into the wall and it like heats up. And I swear to God, it's dollar adjusted been like the most like pleasurable thing I've ever bought. But just stare it on after I go swimming or cycling or something like that. And there's just a gazillion clones of them. They're all from Chinese factories or whatever. But I bought one for a friend for Christmas and became his favorite thing too. Like $20.
Every chair that you sit on throughout the day needs one of these just like draped over it.
Carrying around. Yeah, this is pretty amazing. Yeah, we're still animals and the muscles get sore.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing those. The pepper cannon or the massage plugged in back massager. Hopefully they're both personalized to you at this point.
That's right. You know? Yeah. Coming to a WorkOS merch store near you. We don't have those yet.
Awesome. Thanks again for coming on this show. Really had some really insightful thoughts here. And I feel like we talked a lot about the future of software and the future of how products are going to get built, which is really fascinating. And thanks again for being on the show.
Absolutely. Great to see you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening. If you found this show valuable, You can subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or here on YouTube. We'd love if you could leave us a rating and/or a review, as that helps others find this podcast. See you next time.